Once again, guys, it's longWriter. My next video series is going to be called Does Blizzard Really Hate Gnomish Engineers? It's going to be about professions in general, but mostly about engineering. But before I get to that, I figured I needed to get some general thoughts about Mists of Pandaria out there. One of my biggest concerns that's going to steer what I strive for in Mists of Pandaria will be progression. So I've decided to call this video Does Blizzard Really Hate Progression? Even though I already know that they don't hate progression, and I have to admit that I've got plenty of other concerns and comments in this video besides progression. But hey, I've got a naming theme to keep up here. Now, as concerned as the title of this video makes me sound, I think that Mists of Pandaria is going to be awesome. Scenarios in particular look like a great concept, provided that solo play is engaging and fun for all classes and specs. Another thing that I'm looking forward to in Mists of Pandaria is all the exploration. Now, we've got a lot of info about what we're going to find, especially when we first land. We know who the Alliance and the Horde are going to try to ally themselves with. We've got a lot of information about some of the different factions we can get reputation with. But despite all this information, we don't know everything that's out there. So exploration is still going to be a major part of the gameplay, and actually when you stop and think about it, that makes perfect sense. Pandaria is a whole new continent. The Horde and Alliance have barely heard of it, let alone ever been there, so really they're not going to know what they're going to find, and neither will players. Of course, players like me were kind of expecting another antagonist-centered expansion pack, the same way Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm focused on Arthas and Deathwing respectively. Ashura probably would have been the next lore-logical main antagonist. I already did a whole video about that, so I won't repeat myself. Suffice it to say, Ashura was the main reason I was expecting a Sea Witch expansion next. But I don't think that the lack of a main antagonist in Mists of Pandaria will necessarily be a bad thing. When you stop and think about it, when Cataclysm first came out, the three raid bosses were Cho'Gall, Al'Akir, and Nefarian. They all might have been working for Deathwing, but besides that, they had nothing to do with each other. And yet, their raids were still engaging, so I figure that even if the Shah, the Mogu, the Mantid, and whatever other antagonists Blizzard is going to throw at us in the first tier of Mists of Pandaria content, even if they have nothing to do with each other, their raids are still going to be engaging. Besides, there's a lot of story potential with the final boss encounter of the whole expansion pack. They're saying Garrosh Hellscream is actually going to be the final boss. Now offhand, you don't expect him to be as badass as Arthas or Deathwing. If he was, why did he send Horde players after them instead of going after them himself? But the potential with the story and the lore for having Garrosh as the final encounter is amazing. It really keeps the story engaging and maybe even a little frightening. Besides, think about what the Shah are. The living embodiments of negative emotions. Sounds like Garrosh is going to have everything to do with them by the end of the expansion. So maybe one of them is going to be empowering Garrosh, who knows? But I gotta tell you guys something, because of something that occurred to me, the question of how exactly we're going to get from Pandaria all the way in the south, all the way up to Orgrimmar in the north, kind of scares me. The plot's going to have to move quite a ways in order for that to happen. And here's the reason why it scares me. While I was pondering the state of World of Warcraft, my thoughts drifted to Anduin Wrynn, and how we saw him go from a boy to a kind, powerful in the light teenager who's also intrepid, adventurous, understanding, and he desires peace almost as much as Jaina does. He's like the perfect paragon. And then I thought about how infuriating it would be to the player base as well as to both Alliance and even Horde leaders if Garrosh personally killed Prince Anduin. Now, believe it or not, the Horde leaders have quite a bit of respect for him. Bane, in particular, has a lot of respect for Anduin because they both know what it's like to lose a father. And Vol'jin called on Alliance players to help him against the Zandalari back in patch 4.1. So he'd probably consider killing Anduin a terrible thing and the last straw. We already know he's spring-loaded to take Garrosh out. And I think that it would be absolutely infuriating, both to me, to the player base, to everyone, if he did that. Chris Metzen, if you are watching this right now, quit smiling and nodding. Or, if you insist upon killing Anduin, please have the Sunwalkers resurrect him. I mean, he's a great character. If you let him live, then you get to use him later. And besides, if the Sunwalkers bring him back from the dead, then that would seal the deal that they are finally breaking off from Garrosh. I mean, how would one of us feel if one of our guildmates resurrected Arthas? But enough about my crazy speculation. I gotta say, I'm loving the info that Blizzard is actually giving us. And it's very much in a stark contrast to what happened when Wrath of the Lich King was coming out. Back in those days, players actually made a wiki for data-mined alpha client content. This was so that players could get as much information as they could, as soon as they could. What was Blizzard's response to them making this wiki? Legal action against anyone and everyone who made the alpha client information known. Now, Blizzard was in their legal right to try to keep this stuff under wraps, but to be honest, it was kind of a dick move. Players really wanted to know what was going on, and Blizzard was deliberately and very carefully and probably expensively keeping them in the dark. Blizzard's culture seemed to be a lot about secrecy back in those days, but nowadays they're a lot less secretive, and at the same time, well, they probably did have an alpha stage where they properly kept everything completely secret so that it was invisible to players. The real changes might be purely in what we see on the surface, but even so, what we're seeing is good. It's wonderful that they showed us the talent grids right away so that we could comment on them and leave feedback. But what I really like about it is that they don't just show us the talents, they're showing us class and spec abilities as well. And I'd like to take an aside for a moment and say that class abilities are abilities that you can use regardless of your spec if you choose that class. Spec abilities, you only get those if you choose the spec. And really, this opens up a lot of new possibilities that Blizzard didn't have before. It's actually a pretty solid new system. And while they aren't keeping the official grids on their site up to date, I can understand why not. You guys know that I've been making this Mists of Pandaria talent grid maker for a long time, and I gotta say, it is painful to keep that up to date. And just working on that project has given me a new appreciation for what people on software development projects have to go through. And I'd also like to add that the talent grid thread really is in dire need of love. So if you guys have some time on your hands, please post there, bump it, anything. In any case, at least the fan sites like Wowhead and MMO Champion are keeping their data up to date. As awesome as Mists of Pandaria is going to be, and as awesome as the information is that we have on it, not to mention the very fact that we have that information, there are a few concerns which I have, or things which I really wish they would have already given us, which they haven't. For instance, the progression. Going into Cataclysm, for the first time I actually paid attention to progression. Progression has always been in the game, but I first started paying attention to it in Cataclysm. By my understanding, the way it worked is, first you do level 85 quests, level 85 normal dungeons, and honored level reputation, and that gets you item level 333 gear. If you get enough of that, then you can get into heroics. Heroics, revered level reputation, and justice points, at the time, get you item level 346 gear. This was all the way back in tier 11 when Cataclysm first came out. There's also a lot of level 346 gear that you can get from professions, but some of it wasn't worth the materials costs. I'm going to go over that in my professions video, so I won't rant on that now. In any case, once you get enough level 346 gear, then you can get into raids. Raids get you item level 359 gear, and at the time so could Valor points, Exalted Reputation gear, and a few profession endgame items. I know that heroic raids come after this, but I never really thought that far ahead. The Cataclysm progression made sense, it was fairly straightforward, but they're changing things up a little bit in Mists of Pandaria. If we ignore Reputation, Justice or Valor points and professions, then the progression will probably be like this. Level 90 quests, level 90 normal dungeons, and level 90 scenarios will get you the gear that you need to get into level 90 heroics. From the level 90 heroics, if you get enough gear, you can get into level 90 looking for raid, and if you get enough looking for raid gear, then you can get into raids proper. But what I'm wondering right now is where exactly will the profession, justice point, reputation shortcuts factor in? One of the reasons why I'm really concerned about this was, at the start of Cataclysm, I was downright OCD about getting materials, as many as I could get my hands on, and sending them to my guildmates to get everyone's professions maxed out as fast as possible. I figured this was the fast lane to getting raid level gear, and would help get the whole guild into raids sooner. To some extent I was right. But right now the progression is changing so drastically there's no telling how things like reputation and professions will factor in. And I'd like to say that shortcuts like maxing out your professions and reputations really helped a lot in raids. Raids were particularly hard, and we needed all the help we could get. Besides, it's not fun to be at the mercy of the random number god for all your gear slots, which you essentially are if you have to run heroics for everything you get. I know that it's way too soon to panic about this kind of stuff. Those shortcuts will exist in some form. Blizzard is not stupid enough to take those conveniences out of the game, but I still have some concerns. First of all, Valor points are going to have a brand new purpose, letting you upgrade existing gear rather than getting new gear, which is top of the line. But will Justice points have the same purpose that they do now? Right now, Justice points get you item level 378 gear, which is Fireland's equivalent, and also equivalent to the Hour of Twilight heroics. There really isn't a way to get Raid Finder level gear other than Raid Finder. Valor points get you gear that is more or less equivalent to what you'd get in raids. At Mists of Pandaria launch, what I'm wondering is how far will Justice points get you? Will it get you looking for raid level gear, or will it get you heroic level gear? And also, how far will professions get you? Will there be raid level gear available from professions when you max your profession out? And if so, just how many slots are you going to be able to fill with this profession crafted raid level stuff? I also have to wonder where reputation gear is going to get you. I mean, they're changing the way that you're going to get reputation in Mists of Pandaria. They said that scenarios are going to get you reputation. Now this does sound like an awesome and functional system, but does that mean that the reputation tabard system is going away? I really like the tabard system. Even if the random number god frowns upon you in a heroic run and you don't get the drops you wanted, you at least know that your heroic run wasn't a waste because you got some reputation for it because you were wearing that tabard. And another thing which concerns me is that Blizzard said that getting to Exalted is going to be a real challenge. And that sounds like it's going to be way different from grinding with a tabard on. So will getting to Exalted be a shortcut for raid level gear, or is that the long way? Or maybe will getting to Revered get you raid level gear? Will the tabards get you as far as Revered and then you need to do challenge modes with the tabard on to get further? I'd really like answers to these questions, but I'd like to acknowledge that that stuff may not have been decided yet. I have other concerns about Mists of Pandaria which I'd like to voice in part 2.